and probably Jeff as well. I haven't even converted those bloody videos yet. I should do that. I'm making a note. It's a specialist field, specialist area. If you're going to be involved in this as part of your OHS role in your future life, then I suggest you go away and get some specialist training on injury management and return to work. Most of the insurance companies offer it because it's in their best interest to have somebody within the business who knows how to manage it, because there is a lot of really intense rules in it about 52 weeks and the money side of it. Not all businesses have an active HR section that looks after the funding. So you've got to deal with insurance companies, you've got to deal with the people, you've got to deal with doctors, you've got to deal with managers. It's actually quite a highly specialised role. I find it strange that they actually put it in with OH&S. I mean, it's a result of somebody being hurt, but it really is a standalone role rather than being looped into the OHS role.
It's an after the fact rather than the proactive.
Yeah, so an OHS person would be the trying to stop it from happening, and then you've got this person who deals with it after it's happened. I had a guy on course a couple of weeks ago who's a quality manager, environment manager, safety manager, and return to work coordinator. A whole lot. I don't know how he goes to bed. It's not a small company. You can't be doing everything well.
No. There's
no way known you can be doing everything well. Because this is a particularly difficult area to get into. So, and I'm just going to do a scope over it. So, all employees must have a return to work program which consists of formal policy and procedures, which is why it links into what we're doing, to help keep injured workers whilst they recover and with getting back to work. So there should be a formal process around doing that. Yeah. Commitment to assisting injured workers to remain at work or return to work safely as soon as possible following a workplace injury and illness. One of the things I found is that a lot of doctors are really happy to give people time off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually trying to manage that, because quite often they don't need time off. There's actually other work they could do without having time off. So not that I'm trying to stop the LTIs, the lost time injuries numbers from creeping up or anything like that. I just think that sometimes people can actually do other work, and people who have got long-term injuries, are really bust to get back to work anyway.
Yeah.
Because the money's not that great. If you normally get a lot of overtime and shift work, shift allowances and all that sort of stuff, then working at home and only working for a percentage of your normal wage, it can be a real drag. So a lot of people are pretty keen to get back to work, and it's trying to get them back to work quickly. And some doctors, I call them Dr. How-longs. They're just quite happy to write out a doctor's certificate for as long as people want.
Yeah,
that's who my doctor was in my assessment, Dr. How-long.
I had to deal with a Dr. How-long when I was over at Unilever. There's a Russian guy at the local TAT medical centre who was just writing out people whatever they asked for, and I had to go down and made an appointment and went down and had a chat to him and got him to come to the factory and walk around and talk to us about our return to work processes and everything like that. So he stopped doing that once he knew we were not encouraging people to take time off. I mean, if people were seriously injured and need time off, that's fine. I mean, that's just the way it is. Yeah. But if you don't need to be off work, then if someone cuts their finger with glass, they give them 2 days off. Or there's a million other jobs they could do.
So if they do that, how do you get around that? So if you go to, like, I know my old company, our policy was the supervisor had to go to the doctors or hospital or whatever it was with the employee that injured themselves, and 9 times out of 10 they wanted us to go in with them to make sure that you could see what was going on and making sure that you can get them back to do other duties instead of getting that, like you said, those couple of days off work. If you don't get that luxury in going in with them and they do get 2 days off, can you?
Well, you can ask them to be reassessed by what you should have is a company doctor.
Yeah.
So whether you keep the company doctor on a retainer, whether you just have this is the company doctor, we want you to go and see, and build a relationship with that doctor so that they understand your business's rules.
Yeah.
And that's basically what we did with this guy in TAT, was that when we went down there, he was kind of the guy they had to see.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because like with us, we win work, or we used to be able to win work in all areas of Australia where it could go across. And depending on that area, would it be ideal to go and talk to the local doctors or hospitals and say, if we come down with an injured person or whatever, this is sort of how we're trying to approach it.
Yeah.
If you can go down this track, if possible.
Well, I don't know what doctors are trained in. I've got no idea what they touch on this when they do their training. I'm sure they know they get trained in Medicare pretty well, and how to hit Medicare up. But I'm not sure they actually get trained in the return to work stuff or not. I don't know. But it's I mean, they know how to fill the forms in.
Yeah.
To make a claim, but how do you circumnavigate that? It's, particularly at a hospital, that's a really difficult one. Particularly if the patient doesn't want you in there. Yeah,
well, you'll get some good injured people, that'll want to work with you, but you'll get some that'll just fish for days off, really.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if they take injured days off, it doesn't affect their leave or their sick leave in any way, the long service, it doesn't affect anything. Yep. So, if they can get a couple of days off paid for by the insurance company, then they're quite happy to do that. But it is difficult to manage. It's one of those ones that's you just need a relationship with a doctor that you can say, I want a second opinion. You're going to go and see the company doctor, and there's nothing they can do about it. They can't refuse.
Yeah.
And look, I don't know whether Tracy touched on this or not, but if you in a return to work role or even a manager role, and somebody brings in a claim form for a workplace injury, you've got every right to challenge that. So, because what you would normally do would be to pass it on to the insurance company. And what you do when you pass it on to the insurance company, say, I want this investigated, or we want to challenge this, we're not going to accept, well, the words are, we're not going to accept the claim.
Yeah.
So is it because there was no incident report done as such?
Well, it could be a whole range of reasons. It could be, just a person because you work with them that they're doing something dodgy.
Yeah, okay.
Or that it's not a work-related injury. That they actually injure themselves on the weekend and come to work Monday and claim that it's a workplace injury.
Yeah.
And so you can we've done it I've done it when I was at GoTAFE, refused claims and it forces, unfortunately one of them, the bloody insurance company decided to just pay it anyway, which we let them know we were not too happy about.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got every right as the employer to actually challenge every single claim if you want and force the insurance company to investigate.
Yeah.
And look, they generally do a pretty good job of investigating. And if people know that their claim's being investigated, they'll generally back off. Because they just assume, because a lot of workers don't fully understand the process. They just think that as soon as they put in a claim, it's going to be accepted. Well, it's like an insurance claim. And then when I tell people it's like an insurance claim, if you crash your car, the insurance company doesn't have to accept the claim. If they think it's something's wrong, they've got every right to investigate. So it's no different.
Can you have that in your policy that all insurance claims will be investigated? So it sort of deters them before they try and go for it?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you follow through on it. Remember, that's one of the big things. I've heard me say that before. If you've got to have a policy and procedure about stuff, then you've got to be able to police it.
Yeah.
If you're not going to police it, then don't have it.
Yeah.
Because then it just becomes a pointless exercise. But absolutely. But I mean, if it's really, really obvious that it's a workplace injury, if you actually physically witness it yourself, it's a bit silly to put it off to be investigated.
Yeah.
Because
I suppose you could word it in a way where
the company reserves the right to investigate every single claim.
May investigate
at its choice, investigate work cover claims.
Yeah.
And so and when you're negotiating with your insurance company, just you tell them that it's your policy that claims that you think are dodgy are going to be investigated. And so it puts them on notice as well. Yeah. Because look, it's in their best interest too. Because no insurance company likes to pay out. Because you think it comes out of their own individual pockets, but they don't like. It's no different when you make a claim for your car. It's just they don't like to pay. They just don't like to pay, and so work cover insurance companies are no different. So if they'll work with you about it, because if you say, I think this claim's dodgy, and they say, right, cool, we'll investigate it, and because it's in their best interest to do that. So a little bit of money investigating is probably could save them a lot of money over a year. If it's a year, a claim goes for a year, particularly if it's a psychological injury.
Yeah, or back injury.
Yeah.
I've a number of years ago, I had an employee do their back.
Yeah.
And didn't do a injury report form, and then took it to work cover, and then she was off for quite a number of months, and then she was investigated. It was going to court. Story changed a number of times. Then, so they actually had a private investigator follow her around, and yeah, she was done.
Yeah, and that's
she was caught out.
Yeah, that's what the insurance companies will do. The ones that they can't disprove are psychological injuries.
Yeah.
Because you can live a normal life at home and on the weekend, but as soon as you come into work, that psychological injury starts.
Yeah.
So, if they feel they're being victimised at work, and so they can live a normal life at home, and so how do you disprove it? That's the really challenge. And a lot of people are starting to learn that if you want to make a good work cover claim, just go for the psychological injury, because you'll win. And they're right, they will. Like we had, I think I told you, a guy at Decker who got into trouble. Like the first we knew he was in trouble was when the police showed up to arrest him on site, and carted him off. And then he was charged, and subsequently pled guilty to certain behaviours. Whilst at work, he committed these offences, and then of course we had no choice but to sack him. And then he took us to court, claiming that when he did this mischief, he was under stress, and he cited all these examples leading up to his misbehaviour. And I saw some of them. To me, it was just normal behaviour for this bloke. I didn't see anything different from like anything unusual about his behaviour. And I worked with him for about 12 years. Yeah. His behaviour leading up to it was no different to what he always does. He's a bloody idiot. And so, but unfortunately, his psychologist said that they believed he was behaving like that because he was stressed. Our psychologist said, our psychologist couldn't disprove it, couldn't prove it or disprove it, so he won the case. We got out of it cheap. It cost us a week's wages. That's all it cost us. But that it was just the fact that it just proves that with psychological injuries, you're not going to win.
Hard to prove.
Hard to disprove.
Hard to disprove, yeah.
So if it's a dodgy back, this day with medical imaging, it's pretty easy to tell whether somebody's got a dodgy back or not. Like with CTs and MRIs and all that sort of stuff, it's pretty easy to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, with a psychological injury, it's not that simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's worth, look, if it's a psychological injury, you can investigate it, but it won't go far. Yeah. They could go out on the weekend and do party. They can go and do whatever they normally do on the weekend, but it's only when it happens at work. That's what their argument's going to be. This behaviour only happens when I'm at work. Mm-hmm. So, and you're just going to wear that one. And more and more people are learning that every day. So, so it is in your best interest to have a good process around managing injury management or return to work processes, and have it pretty rigorous. And you're right, Luke. If people know that the company is going to investigate, because I don't think if people make claims, they don't actually realise that there is a process around it. Mm. They just think that, particularly if it's a couple of days off, not years, not years, but they just think it's a couple of days and it's just, the boss just pays. But it's actually an insurance company. And of course, then you have this insurance premium increases because you made a claim, and particularly big claims. Mm-hmm. And so it starts to cost the company a lot of money. Yeah. So it's not a bad idea for that to be known publicly, that all claims are going to be investigated, and that it just won't be accepted on face value that it was a workplace injury.
Yeah. So I know that some businesses that I've heard of, I don't know if how true how their process is, that they just go and pay for just put it on Medicare and I'll just pay the gap, the difference, because putting it under work cover, it costs a lot more money, and some people actually allow that. They go, I just put it on Medicare and don't say that you did it at work, because it's going to cost more money for us. We'll just pay the, and we'll.
Yeah.
It's a bit dodgy the way that they've sort of done it, because I haven't heard and I went, what?
Yeah, no, I've seen that done. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure Luke's heard this story, but when I was working at Unilever, there's a soap factory in Wellington in New Zealand, and they had about 5 years of no lost time injuries. And because all the OHS coordinators used to get together on an annual basis for a get together, and I called bullshit really early.
Yeah.
Because it's a soap manufacturing, which is historically not that safe. How are you, Jeff?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Is historically not that safe, and so I call bullshit in a friendly, polite way, and a bit of a laugh, and because I know that I've got a brother that lives in New Zealand, has lived there since 1975, and he was a union delegate, so he actually worked for the bankers union or the bank workers union. And he was saying that over there, the standard practice is that your sick leave is not accumulative. So if you get 10 days a year, come December 31st, you're back to zero. January 1, you get another 10 days. So they're not like us where they accumulate up to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of days. So what the company was doing was encouraging people to use up their sick leave instead of putting work cover claims in. Does that make sense? So people are going to lose their sick leave anyway at the end of the year. So if they injured themselves, they just took sick leave. They didn't put a claim in, and they eventually had a degloving, and it all got uncovered. And one contractor got caught in a machine and got degloved. His hand got degloved, and it all came. That's when it came out. So yeah, there are people who will do shonky stuff to make themselves look good. That's why. I'm going to talk about lag and lead indicators a bit later, and that's why you tend to move away from the lag indicators, and I'll explain why soon. But anyway, well, it talks about there being communicated. So there's penalties if you don't communicate well. I mean, most of you will have, if you're injured at work, posters around the place with your insurance company details on them.
Which is the if you're injured posters from WorkSafe.
Yeah. Yep. I think there's a new one came out recently. So
yeah, it's a new fella.
Yeah. It's a yellow poster.
Yeah.
So you put your insurance company details on it, or you put your internal people's details on it that they come to. When a worker has an incapacity, a business has an obligation of the law to help them return to work. I've sent you, look, there's a whole stack of stuff. I don't want to spend time on this. This is a subject that Tracy's going to do in more detail later. But it can be a minefield. Just be very aware that the whole claim, one of your predecessors who did the Cert 4 with us, when we were talking about return to work in one of the, actually I might have been even in this class, she was saying that they've got a person at their work who has never put a claim in for workers' comp, but they're paying him when he has time off. I said, what? No. Put the bit of paper in front of him and let him make a formal claim, and then go through the process of getting it investigated. They were just paying him without any evidence that he'd actually injured himself at work.
Oh God!
Like, this is before her time. She's come in and has inherited this. I said, no, you need to bite the bullet and sort this out, because this guy is taking the company for a ride.
Jeez.
So people are naive. They don't know, and so this guy says, I've injured myself at work and I'm going to have some time off, and they've gone, oh, okay, because no one's there to manage it.
How long does it normally take for your certificate of capacity to come through so you can start planning the return to work?
Every 2 weeks.
Well, it could vary from who's doing the paperwork and who's doing it. And well, my son was about to drive at the front lawn again then. Just watching him. I was about to leap out. He's not in my good books at the moment. So he went home. Mike's shed has got internal padlocks on the roller door, so you can't unlock them.
Yeah.
And he took one out the front with him. He forgot to bring it back, so he actually put it in my letterbox, but he actually locked my letterbox. and I went out this morning and thought some wanker had walked past and locked my letterbox. I got out the portable angle grinder and went there and cut the lock off.
Not realising it was yours anyway.
Yeah, anyway, just for him to say, oh, by the way, that was for your front back shed. It's actually one of a set of 3, so it's like, so I'm going to have to go and buy 3 new ones. Not just a new one. So anyway, kids, they never stop. So injured at work versus injured at home time. I kind of touched on this already.
Yeah.
So yeah, just if your policy is to look after people injured outside of work, good on you. Bloody minefield. My recommendation is don't do it because you're managing. Because if they re-injure themselves at work, then you've now copped the liability.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think you spoke about that last week.
Yeah, did I talk about the lady in Melbourne who broke her ankle? And we had to go and do a risk assessment on her house. And she had a sunken lounge. And we told her that for the duration of 2 or 3 hours a day she was working for us, she was not to go into the sunken lounge. Because that was we deemed that as too much of a risk. If she did it in her own time, I mean, how do you disprove it? Like, but yeah, that was part of the return to work plan, was that she was banned from going into a sunken lounge while she was working for us.
So you actually went to her house and actually did an assessment on her property?
Yep, because she was working at home. She requested that she work at home because her ankle was broken. She wanted to work. So we obliged that, but we had to feel that she was, I mean, we're paying for it.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that she's actually, what she's doing is actually safe. So we had to do a risk assessment to work at home here.
Yeah, I'd had to do the same, but it's more of just ticking the boxes to say, yep, all right. To make sure that your desk is a certain height and your chair's fine. And
yeah, well, we did all that sort of stuff. There's no trip hazards, and we commit to taking regular breaks and all that sort of stuff. Because that's one of the big issues when you're working at home, is you forget to get up and go for a walk, and where you're more likely to do that at work and knock off and go home after 7.5 hours or 8 hours, whereas at home you don't tend to do that.
No.
I did today. I didn't start work till 1 today.
Oh, good boy.
Just ignored everybody. So as far as putting it into your WHS management system, or OHS management system, same format, same process, but certainly you need to address it in your procedures and policies of the business. Like you should have risk assessment procedures, you should have manual handling procedures, you need to have a return to work or injury management procedure. And it outlines those things Luke that you was talking about the right to investigate. I think most of them would have that anyway, but it's sometimes if you're going to make changes to your procedures, you need to do a training with your group so that they know that the procedure's changed. You just can't develop it and stick it in the library, whether it's a paper library or an internet library, and just expect people to know. It's important that it's communicated, saying that we've made changes to the procedure. This is what's expected, and just so you know, if you have an injury, this is what the process is going to be. And we're here to support you, and we love you, and we're going to give you a group hug, but don't try and rip us off. Yep,
and keep 1.5 metres apart.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Look, the thing there is talking about a standalone procedure. So I think our procedure is a return to work injury management procedure. You can do either if. You can just call it a return to work procedure. It talks about injury management. But it needs to outline pretty clearly what the processes are. And look, I'll be surprised if your business haven't got them. Luke, you've got one in your business?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Okay. Renetta, you got one?
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm sure Tracy, Jeff.
Yes, we definitely do. Yep.
Jeff, have you got one in the business? A return to work? Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's worth, even after this, the training with Tracy and even just a bit of a chat I'm doing on it, it's worth to pull it out and have a bit of a look at it and to see that it's actually doing what it should be. As I talked about earlier on, it was last week, that sometimes procedures are written and they've got review dates and they're not reviewed, or people forget to review them, or just assume they don't have to review them, and all of a sudden they become out of date, and then something happens and WorkSafe visit you and you've got procedures and processes that are out of date and not right. And look for where it can link into other procedures as well. So if you can put some of when you're writing your procedures, if you can tap into another procedure and modify it to suit your needs, that's all the better. If it needs to be standalone, that's fine as well. So decide what to include in the procedure. It's just going to be guidance, or it's going to go full detail. I think something like return to work really needs to be guidance. This is what you need to do if you're injured at work, sort of stuff. And then some guidance, basic guidance for the person managing it in the process. What the manager has, what responsibilities the manager's got, what responsibilities the worker's got, what responsibilities the return to work coordinator's got. I think in some of those examples I've set out, I think there's pretty much like that. Particularly one of the examples I've set out for your assessment, I think one of those is a return to work injury management procedure. It's got some detail like that in it. It's one of the ones I actually land mail to you. And then, of course, the simple process is consult, develop, train, implement. So consult about the development, that whiteboarding I talked about, develop the procedure, probably have to take it back and get it fine-tuned, train, and then implement people. You got to train people so they know there's a new procedure and so they understand what it is. So yes, it's best to have a process on how to develop a procedure. I know it sounds silly. A process on how to write procedure, format, company structure, etc., etc. So I've already touched on that. So do you need a procedure? Firstly, do you need a procedure? Don't just write procedures for the sake of writing procedures. If they're not going to be used, if they're not going to be policed, if they're not going to be implemented properly, don't have them.
Yeah. Because
it's just bloody pointless. Because all it does is create work that you're going to have to go back and look at. So you actually need to have a procedure about that. Are there only others in the business that you can be modified to suit? And I gave the example last week about that continuous improvement one that we've just modified it to include the work safe stuff rather than just rewriting a whole new procedure. An initial draft. I guess there's probably a step in there before that, and that's where you whiteboard it. You sit down and actually whiteboard the process, and then that's why I talked about writing everything, just get brainstorming, put everything on the whiteboard, and then as a group get consensus about what should happen first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. So you actually get a flow, a bit like a flow chart. You actually get a flow of what the procedure should do, and it's important to get the consensus so that everybody agrees that that's actually what the format is. Back when I was a defensive driver trainer, there was a systematic way of driving we used to teach. And so we used to get everybody, we just say, okay, when you come over to this section, what do you do? And there's all these people would throw all this stuff at us about what they would do if they're coming out to the intersection to turn right. And so what we would do then is work with them to come up with a logical sequence about doing that. And so you're actually doing it by consensus, but doing it logically so that people come on board with it. Preliminary consultation, get feedback. Is it representing the correct process? And look, as I said, sometimes it's really nice to have a wish list. And I've seen it time and time again where individuals will write procedures and pump them out without any consultation. And it's maybe a wish list of what the boss or somebody else thinks is the important flow of the process, but it could be wrong because they haven't been out and done it, or it could be, it could be some contract they've got where a process says this has to happen this certain way. That's fine. But it needs to be communicated, and people need to understand why this process is being done this way. Why does the procedure say to do it like this when in actual fact we've been doing it the other way for 100 years? Why do we now have to change the way we're doing it? Because all this bit of paper appears and says we're now got to change. So it's important that there's a logical discussion around why this has happened. And it's important to get the process correct. As I talked on last week, it's about continuous improvement. So the more people you get involved in it, and the more feedback you get, the better the process is going to be. And then you'll start to find, like, somebody will say, well, I do it over this way because it enables, it cuts out one step and I get a better product and da-da-da-da. And they're like, oh, I never thought about doing it like that. So you've got this continuous improvement process going on. So you document that. and then of course you then need to, you know, to
Hopefully you have a continuous improvement on return to work, because that would mean that you've got a lot of claims.
yeah. Well, the whole point of return to work is not. Well, the whole point of OHS is not to have claims.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. And look, I think I said to you that, you know, at Unilever we self-insured because we had so few claims. It wasn't worth paying the insurance company. So it's actually cheaper for us to manage the claims than to pay an insurance company. So it's been an interesting place to be. There's a lot of companies do it. Cleanaway is a different example. Again, they actually don't use the state-based work cover legislation. They actually use common law. They've gone with a federal injury management process because their business is right across Australia. So they put a case up to say that we want to run under the federal work cover scheme rather than the state-based, because they're there in every state and territory. Imagine trying to deal with that if you've got to develop a system for every single state that's different from the other states. So they actually got permission to actually run under the federal legislation for work cover, which makes a lot of sense. If your business is in that position, it makes a lot of sense to do that. Review after first consultation, follow up to make sure that it's still the right process, revise the draft, gain endorsement. So just put it out there and let everyone to sign off to say, yep, we're really happy with that. That's how that's what the flow is. And then normal approvals through the business processes, whatever it is, where the CEO has to sign it and sign off or whatever that really means. And then put it out for publication and then communicate and train. So I'll just go back in case you missed that. Do you need it? Are there other procedures that can be modified? Just put an initial draft together, put it out for consultation, review it after the first consultation, follow up to make sure it's still okay, revise the draft, put it out through to get endorsement through a consultation group, and then get approvals, and then publicise it and train people. It's important that people get trained. Yes. That way they can't say they don't know. And do you get them to sign a bit of paper to say that they've been trained?
Yes.
Absolutely. Do you keep that on file? Absolutely.
Yes. Yep.
Absolutely. That's really, really important that occurs. And then, of course, you then go out and implement it. And then, look, you could argue then you go out and police or review. And that the review is a logical step because that's your continuous improvement cycle. But then there's also a policing factor if it's important, whether it's policing for compliance or policing for product quality. You know, if you've got a procedure around building widgets and you want to make the widgets exactly the same every time, then you'd have to do some sort of policing to make sure that's occurring. So, you know, as I said last week, it's important to do things right the first time so you don't have to do things right the second time. And it's always amazes me how people find time to do things right the second time, but they couldn't find the time to do it right the first time. And you say that to people, and they say that to people, and they look at you and they go, that's actually quite logical. You slow down and do it right the first time, it means you won't have to find time to do it right the second time.
Well, that's it. You spend more time, don't you?
That's it. Yeah. You might take, if it's a 10-minute project, it might take you 11 minutes to do it, but it'll save you doing 10 minutes twice. If that makes sense. So, yeah, it's always interesting. I always find that a bit fascinating. Mind you, I've been renowned for doing it, rushing and not checking stuff too. So, you writing all it down, Tracy?
Yep.
Tell me when you're done. Yeah, the slides are sitting in Teams, you know.
Oh, that's right, they are too. So I won't worry about it.
I just thought I'd run that by.
Yeah, putting them on Teams is good because I can just pull them out there and put them in my folders.
That's all right. I won't write any more down.
I think it's nice that you are. Don't get me wrong, it makes me feel like I've done a good job. But I just worry that you're doing it unnecessarily.
No, sometimes I like to write notes is because then it reminds me of the conversation or what you're actually saying. That's all. Yeah.
That's okay. I just hate to think you're writing everything down.
Brain.
Just the way my brain works. I've just got to write it down.
Yeah,
I may not even look at it again, but I have written it. I remember it.
it's actually interesting. I'm not a person who writes a lot of stuff down, where
Yeah.
Tracy writes everything down. Like we'll go to a meeting together and she'll come out of there with a notepad full of notes and I'll just walk out.
That's me. Yep. I just walk out.
I just think that I'm either going to do a data dump because it wasn't worthwhile, or I've learned heaps and I've retained it anyway. So,
No, there's some things though, there's no way I'm going to retain everything. I've got to write the key things down and then I'm fine.
well, one of the interesting things is that, I think I've said this before, as a trainer, you only like tonight, you're only going to retain about 40% at best of what I talk about tonight.
Mm.
How does that make me feel?
Mm.
That's
Normal.
why I have to go back and listen to you to make sure it's recorded.
That's normal. Look, I learned that back in my very early days of vocational training, that most people only retain about 40% of what you say. So you've got to really overtrain people so they retain a bit more than that. So, but that's just the fact. So what's our OHS performance? Sorry, Tracy, I cut you off.
I was going to say that there's certain things that you want people to understand, you've got to say it about 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting. One of the things I learned, a really good trick I learned, is that if you want to remember somebody's name, you put it into 3 or 4 different sentences. Put their name into 3 or 4 different sentences. Something about them. Tracy's got trees in her background. Tracy is this and Tracy does that. So it's things about them that relate to them, and that way you're putting a face to a name. It actually helps to retain the name better.
Mm.
But when you're pissed at the party, it doesn't always help to do that.
Yeah, even if I'm not pissed, I don't remember everyone's names.
I'm shit with names. I can't remember anyone's name.
Same.
I work with a guy who was ex-military, and he would meet a busload of school kids, 40 kids on a bus. He would stand at the door, introduce himself. They would introduce themselves back. He'd walk into the classroom and he'd remember every single one of them.
It's so annoying because Frank's like that. It's like they've got photographic memory or some shit.
Yeah, this guy, we used to watch him week after week after week, and we're constantly astounded that he never got it wrong. Just how he could just put a name to a face every single time.
Mm.
But it's just extraordinary to watch. You go, it's almost like, what's that? Idiot savant like Rain Man. It's almost a defect.
No, people know me and I don't know who they are, but they're talking to you like that they know you really, and you're going, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
Well, that happens to me.
I feel really embarrassed. I really don't know who they are.
Well, that happens to me a lot when you're a trainer and you meet so many people.
Yeah.
It's not so bad doing this course with you guys because I'm going to see you for a year. But when I see people in a 5-day course, for example, particularly over 5 weeks, like 1 day a week over 5 weeks, you walk down the street and they say good day and you go, well, I know the face. We've got no idea who it is. And yeah, it used to, every week at DEC we had 4 new students every week. And so it just all goes. It just goes. You remember them while they're there. You think they're awesome. The interesting thing is you usually remember the bad ones, not the good ones.
Yeah, true.
So it's good business practice to measure OHS performance. It can be done in a number of ways. And this is when we start talking about lag and lead indicators. I just gave a heads up before, Jeff, because they've changed this unit so much, there's not a whole lot of guts left in it. So I wouldn't be surprised if I actually get through the slides tonight.
Uh-huh.
Which means you'll have a couple
of nights.
So you'll have a couple of nights to work on your assessment.
Great. So
yeah, because they've cut the guts out of the unit. Anyway, I can't do much about it. So lead indicators are proactive measures that organisations undertake to assist in so what are some lead indicators? These are proactive measures. Don't look at your handouts. what things could you do that are positive that you could measure? So the thing I said a while ago was that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it.
Yeah.
So we're looking for things to measure that are proactive, positive things. What things could we measure?
Training.
Training, absolutely. How much OHS training we've done this year?
Mm-hmm.
So we've trained all of our first aiders, we've trained all of our wardens, we've trained all of our HSRs, we've trained this person on working at heights, we've trained this person. It's all showing everybody that you're being really proactive towards health and safety.
Yep.
So that's one, absolutely that's one. What's another one?
Or how many incidents that have come through?
No.
No? Well, that would be the other.
No, they're backwards. They're lag indicators. What about how many incidents have been, not how many hazards have been reported? How many near misses have been reported? How many safety walks have occurred?
Uh-huh.
They're all proactive things to try and stop people hurting themselves. So if you think about it in that light, about what things are we doing to stop incidents from occurring, then they're lead indicators. But they've got to be measurable. Otherwise, they're not real. They're not an indicator. So we've got to be able to measure them. So if we looked at last year, how many hazards were reported, or how many hazards were resolved, even.
Yep.
That's a positive thing, and we can measure it. Like last year, we had 40 hazards reported. We've resolved 38 of them. This year, we've had 42 reported, and we've resolved 42 of them. So you're starting to see this improvement. So they're given an indicator, and you can actually measure what's going on. Same as safety walks. How many of your businesses do safety walks?
All the time.
Safety walks.
Yeah, safety walks. So if you've got a part of your business, Renita, that they've got all the tools and shit stacked up and timber laying around and floor tiles and wall tiles, and you got an area like that at the back of your business?
Yeah, like it's all like storage, yeah.
Yeah. So
Like shit everywhere.
so if you were to do an OHS safety walkthrough there, what would you uncover?
Depends if I hit my leg on the way through.
Well, I mean, if you go through there and
It's actually
focus
pretty good. It's pretty good because they have to get the forklift in and out, so everything's pretty.
But how are your leads? Are they all tagged and tested and in date?
Did it on the weekend. My husband's an electrician, so I do all the testing and tagging.
But you understand, I mean, that's things you can do. You can go and actually audit those stuff to see that it's okay. Is there, because we always talk about housekeeping as being a serious workplace problem. So is the workplace nice and neat and tidy? If I said to you, I want you to go and find this, am I going to find it easily, or do I have to unpack it underneath a whole stack of other stuff? Is there tools laying around, wheelbarrows laying up against something else?
Yeah. Tripping hazards, looking for tripping hazards, looking for something.
Is the warehouse nice and tidy and neat and easy to find stuff? And
if there's pedestrian walks where, say, if forklifts are on one side, pedestrians are on that side, making sure that in that pedestrian side things are not overlapping those lines where people can actually cut their leg or whatever. My dad actually, this is years and years ago, remember Click Eaton?
Yep.
Click Eaton?
Yep. Oakie's Toy World.
Yes. So he went there as a rep, and they had pedestrian lines that where people could walk, and he was one of those, had the vest on, all those sort of things, had to walk through, and didn't see a bit of wire coming out of a bale of wool, and he's walked straight into it and went straight in through his leg.
Yep.
Things like that. That's a hazard indicator, wouldn't it?
You can even walk around looking for compliance of people wearing PPE, or there's a whole stack of things you can do. What we used to do at Unilever was that the HSRs and managers were all scheduled to do a safety walk a month, and they would have to do different areas. I used to draw up a roster for them, and so they were expected as part of their job to actually go and do this stuff.
Yep.
So you can measure then about how many hazards they reported, and how many of those have been resolved, and how many safety walks were being done. And I like to think that if you're going to do a safety walk, you walk around and look for the good things.
Mm-hmm.
So you look for people doing the right thing and you encourage that behaviour. Does anyone like to get a kick in the bum?
No.
Does everyone like a pat on the back?
Yep, that's right.
So
I like giving compliment sandwiches.
do you?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the hamburger
Yeah,
principle.
give them a little bit of good, then
No,
smash
that's good.
it.
Give us back and we go, but keep up with that one.
I reckon you can do better here, but I'll look at that next time. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I call that the hamburger.
Yeah.
The hamburger principle. You tell us something really good, smack them with some shit in the middle, and then finish on something really good as well.
Yeah. Same as coaching netball team. Same thing.
Yeah. You got to work on that principle. So they're all lead indicators. They're all positive things that the business is doing, and should be reporting and should be measuring.
I used to do that for the old mob I used to work for. We had hazard cards, which were identifying the hazards and putting controls in place for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We had workplace inspections, task inspections. So the supervisors had to do one task inspection and one workplace inspection a month, and then our PMs and engineers had to do a late audit once a month.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good thing to do because it's if people are taking it all very seriously, then it actually makes a huge difference in the business. And as I said, it's nice to take the positive approach rather than the negative approach.
Yeah,
well, so you walk around and tell people that this is really good, the hamburger.
Yeah.
And because people generally remember the first thing you tell them and the last thing you tell them.
Yeah. But the way I sort of look at it out on site is I don't really get up the guys too much because they're on site all day, every day. They do get blind to some of the things where new people coming in, new set of eyes, picks up something real quick.
Yep.
So it's nothing personal unless they've completely looked at it and turned their eye the wrong way, and that's a different story. But
look, and it is people. People get busy doing stuff.
Yeah.
And if they work, and people are very good at finding a workaround.
Yeah.
To a problem. Like that's what one of the things we're very, really good at is to work, find a shortcut, find a quicker way. That's just what we do.
Well, I like to put it out there to the guys is let's beat the system and come back to me with a better idea. So
Yep, absolutely. If you think there's a better way of doing this, for God's sake, sing out.
There is one thing.
I'll take credit for your thoughts.
Yeah, bloody oath. How do builders, Renita, you might be able to answer this one. How do builders, when they're putting up trusses on roofs and whatnot, just be able to stand on top of that roof with that fall? I've always been curious to know how they get away with that 2 metre high fall from heights, all that.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to come across that, or has someone picked that up on your building sites?
Well, who puts the structure? Who puts the fall protection up?
Nah, who's like when they're putting the frame up to hold the roof? Like 9 times out of 10, you'll see builders just walking across on top of the frame of the house, just putting up the roof trusses.
I actually had this discussion with a certain bearded glass-wearing WorkSafe inspector once.
Yeah, what did he come back with? Because I've always been curious.
Well, it was actually a really interesting discussion. Back when I was a young fellow, I actually used to build houses. From when I was 16 through till I was nearly 19, I worked as a builder's labourer. And part of that was being a roof tiler. And so I laugh when I drive past a building site and see these steel bars bolted to the fascia boards of a house with no roof on it.
Yeah.
And I think, who put them up there? That's my first question. How did they get put up there? Firstly, so what was the process? Did they use the scaffolding? What did they use to put that fall protection on? And how is that fall protection going to stop me if there's no tiles and no tin falling through the space?
Yeah. Exactly what I would.
But so there's this bearded glass-wearing WorkSafe inspector said, well, if it's got a fence around it, it's fine. And I just really choked because I have fallen through a roof.
Is that really the answer? Even though there's
that's all they look for.
A person can fall through and onto the floor that's more than 2 meters.
Yep.
Wowee.
See, that actually doesn't make sense.
I know. See, when you think about it logically, but they drive past a building, and if it's got that fall protection bolted to the fascia, they think that's okay. But I think there's huge gaps in that, because I've actually fallen through a roof. And when you fall through a roof that's tile, because when there's tile, the battens are a lot closer together than what they are when it's tin.
Yeah.
And even the trusses are further apart on a tin roof than what they are on a tiled roof. So there's actually a bigger space on a tin roof to fall through. So they should really be wearing a
bubble wrap
with bubble wrap with a fall arrestor and anchored correctly and done all properly. That's what they should be doing, regardless of whether there's a bloody fence around the fascias or not. That's irrelevant to me.
Yeah, that's in my opinion.
If the tin's on or the tile's on, great
story. Yeah.
But if there's no roof on, then what's to stop people falling through?
Yeah, that was always my opinion. I was like, if you fall through and land, like how high would those roofs be? 2.5 meters?
Oh well, the floor to ceiling is 8 foot. So what's that? 2.5 meters, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So you're over that.
And then you got the height of the truss above that. So wherever, I mean, that can be another 2 or 3 meters at the peak.
Oh yeah, just always used to. I used to
look at about between 4 and 5 meters.
Is it reasonable, practical type of? It's not practical to do it any other way.
Well, basically, they should be wearing harnesses and fall arresters and tied off is what they should be wearing.
So I hear a lot of people say that those harnesses are actually more hazard.
Only because I don't like wearing them.
That's right.
Because they are a fall arrestor. They work the same as your seatbelt.
Yeah.
If you're pulling them really hard, they lock. That's what they're designed to do. So if you fall, it's going to arrest your fall.
Yeah.
They're not just a harness with a rope and tied off to a gum tree out in the paddock. They're actually supposed to be.
They're only strong enough as where they're anchored.
Well, no, they don't. They can be longer, but it just when they snap lock when people fall. That's what they're supposed to do to stop people hitting the ground. Yeah. But yeah, not everybody provides those. And I just get
likes them.
Or like them. And I get why people don't like them. Like it's like my son who's a builder. He used to hate wearing long pants and a long sleeve shirt, but I get that.
We had a meeting about, I don't know, a year ago, and the boys said, our harnesses are all out of date, blah, blah, blah. Yep. So anyway, we went out and I made sure we got all new harnesses so that they were all current and great. 3 out of 4 of them are still sitting in the packet outside the office.
Look, that's again, is the policy they have to wear them? So who's not policing the policy?
A lot of that high risk sort of work like that, like roofing and stuff like that, we subcontract out. So we don't do a lot of that stuff.
So who was the subcontractor?
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm.
Sorry, mate. They're employees.
Well, I know, but you can't police. I can't police that.
Yes, you can.
Well,
it's part of their contract.
Part of their contract, absolutely.
Unless they're using their own harnesses.
Most of the time.
Look, you can't be everywhere either. That's where you rely on the people to help you out. But bottom line is. Yeah.
I remember when I was actually working at council, we had because we were obviously in charge of, looking after the contractors on site. And one contractor had to get up on the roof of the cafe at Kidstown and needed a fairly big ladder to get onto the actual roof of the building. But then he decided that he'd leave the ladder where it was in a playground, because you do that, and walk away from it. But we're responsible for him leaving that ladder, because I could have had a child go up on the roof because he left that ladder out. But that's my responsibility. I'm responsible for that contractor. I
know it's shit, but that's why.
So and that was actually reported to, like, that was a hazard report that was done, and that was a near miss.
Yeah.
Because that contractor actually walked away.
A little bit silly that, like, say, for instance, if we get Waters and we're contracting them to do electrical work and their electrician hurts themselves on our site, why does that fall back on us when they are a huge, way much bigger company than what we are? That's their work cover and their work safe policies that should be.
So it's your notifiable incident, but it comes on their insurance company.
Look, we talk about work cover insurance, which is very different to OHS work, and so that's.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you assume with a big company like that, like if you're getting them as a subcontractor, that they're going to take and have their staff trained.
No, not at all. No, you just
You can't train everyone else's staff.
what the Act does allow you to do, and it's section 21(3)(b, is to sign over responsibility to them. But they take on the responsibility for OHS themselves, but you still have to watch them and audit them. Otherwise, you've still got to be exposed, because they'll still stuff up. But bottom line is, if they know you're policing, they'll do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I found.
And if you say, if you don't get this right, we're going to go with bloody bonnets next time. And that starts to, if you can't comply with the rules, mate, then we're going to have to find somebody else to do it. And that's your right as the prime employer. You've got every right to use whatever contractor you want. If they can't play by the OHS rules, you get somebody else who will.
Yeah.
And you tell the new person exactly.
That sounds really good in theory, but in a practical sense, that's not practical.
Well, it's what one of your options is what you can do.
If they know that you're policing them, like I know that waters, like we've had waters at council a number of times, and if they didn't comply, they were going to lose the contract with a big council. So, and they did at one stage. Then we'd never use them again for different jobs, and then we'd go to another electrician, then we'll try them out again, and then they complied.
They're on their last warning at the moment.
What you can do is just start sending their workers off site. And you ring up the boss and say, I've just kicked one of your workers off because he's not playing by our rules, and so he's now suspended for 6 months. We're going to see one of our sites again for 6 months.
Yeah,
that's what you can do, absolutely, and that's not jeopardising using them.
You do have to do it sometimes.
You let them know. You let them know who's boss.
I totally agree, but just in a what if it's an absolute accident that they've fallen and hurt themselves, and then with the laws the way they are at the moment, just because someone's accidentally hurt themselves, Frank could actually go to jail.
No, you can't go to jail for hurting themselves. You go to jail for killing people.
Yeah, you can only go to jail if they're actually, if your processes are not in place.
Absolutely complicit in their behaviour. So he has to tell them to do it. No, that's a 10-foot wall. I want you to walk off the edge of that wall or else. And they do it. That's the only way he's going to be exposed. By having normal process and procedures, he's never going to go to jail. Never, ever going to go to jail. Even if he's managing poorly, it would be unlikely he would go to jail.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah. But what you can do is start sending the contract. We did that with a mob over at Unilever, who was an engineering business. One of their workers would not comply, so he banned him off site. So then they had to hunt around and train somebody else to come on site. So it puts them on notice. It lets them know that who's the boss. Because you can warn, like this guy got warned about 3 or 4 times in the end, and we spoke to his boss, and we've spoken to him. Yeah, he won't do it again. Comes back on site and does it again. So this day I said, right, pack up your tools, you're out. And he looked at me and said, pack up your tools, you're out, mate. And he said, before you get back to the office, your boss is going to know that I kicked you off site.
Yeah.
And we don't want you back here again. You can't play by the rules. You're not coming back on our site. It's not that difficult. You've got to be a bit of an arsehole, but it's not that difficult. Because they know they're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It's just matter. People just got to manage.
Speaking of, you mentioned bonnets before. We had them on a site, and they've got 10 different swims for 10 different tasks, and they've got this cover page on the front of the swims with the 10 swims listed, and then they just sign them to say that they've signed the 10 swims. Can they do that, or should they be signing?
They should be signing individually. Each individual.
It's a pretty good shortcut, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't accept that.
So I went there.
They're actually supposed to sign off the fact that they know what they are.
Well, that's why I went and asked them a question out of one of their swims, and they couldn't tell me. So
yeah.
I pulled them and said, you're going to have to sign each one, because I didn't really like the blanket signing either.
No. It's not playing by the rules.
No.
Somebody somewhere's come up with a good idea.
Yeah, it's smart in logic, but really you're opening yourself up.
Yeah, it's not really a good idea at all.
Can I ask a question, Trev? With the lead and the lag indicators there, so because I'm sort of in a different sort of position when I'm actually visiting different workplaces. So they've got to have their own processes in place for their business. So that's not my job to actually check that they, well, it is sort of, but it's not my job to police it.
They're your employees, aren't they?
Well, we would be their employee because we'd be contracting to them.
So you're not a labour hire company.
We're the labour hire company, but then if we're placing, say, an apprentice, say at Moretto's, and to make sure that all their processes are in place, and go, yep, tick, 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 good. But if I'm sort of doing a bit of a walk around to say, okay, I've just noticed that you've got all this stuff in front of your fire reel here, you know, that can't be accessed, you know. Those sorts of things.
So
why are you shaking your head there?
Because we do have stuff in front of our fire wheel at the moment.
who is the employer?
Well, the business, the people that I'm doing a check on.
You are.
But it's their site, not my site.
This is
what is a workplace? Open up your copy of the Act and tell me what a workplace is.
Wherever the employee, well, I suppose our employee, so our apprentice working on their site. So we're the employer. So that means I've got to make sure that their processes are in place.
Absolutely.
And if they don't play ball,
you pull them out.
This is what I'm saying to you, Tracy.
Or you give the business a non-compliance. You give the business a non-compliance.
Yeah, so that makes, I think it makes sense to me. So if Moretto's have got a job and they need labour hire and the labour hire goes in, you can check to make sure that they're working under their procedures or policies, and if they're not, you can pull them out.
Yes. Yeah.
You need to make sure that you're comfortable that he's safe working on Moretto's site.
Yep.
And if not, then you pull him off. And if they are, happy days. And then if you think that something's not meeting what they're saying they're doing, well, you write a hazard report.
Give them a non-conformance and tell them to smarten up.
Can I do that though?
Stop using me as an example.
No, I'm not. I haven't seen your fire reel. I haven't done the inspection yet. Haven't been there. That's just a subtle hint.
Give them a non-conformance. Does your business have non-conformance reports or anything like that?
I don't think so.
Do you have a quality system?
That's all right.
Well, it's similar to what I've got at the moment. So we've got John Holland, who have got a contractor working for them, but we go in there, and if wards aren't following JH's processes, we pull them up.
Yeah, you got every right, Tracy. Absolutely, because you're the employer.
Okay.
And look, probably the good thing is you probably really need to establish that early on with the host employer.
Yeah.
And say, look, we are ultimately responsible for this person. So are you, but so are we. And if we think things are not safe, we're going to have to say something. Because we're putting our employee in your workplace, we expect you to provide them. Do they sign a bit of paper to say they're going to provide the work with the safe workplace?
Yes, they do. Yes. Okay. Cool.
There's a lot of companies out there that say they're going to do a lot of stuff but don't actually do it. So it'd be good to check them.
We do check them, and I go, right, or they won't have an LH&S policy, and I go, right, we need to have an LH&S policy. So then I'll guide them to the essentials, WorkSafe Essentials program to help them to develop it. I'm not going to develop it for them. That's not my job. You've got to do that yourself. Yeah.
Do they need an LH&S policy? Under your rules, they might have, but under the Act, they don't have to have one. Your company policy may say they have to, but under the Act, they don't have to.
What happens if they don't have any policies whatsoever?
They've got to have processes, systems of work. They've got to have systems of work.
Mm-hmm.
Safe systems of work.
A system of work, and it could be a verbal system of work. It doesn't have to be a written one. They prefer written, absolutely prefer written. But
what happens if they haven't got anything, like they've got their safe system of work, but they've got no proof of it? And something happens.
Well, I use this scenario is that WorkSafe, Brad Watt works into Tajura Butchers, and the apprentice is there, and there's 2 butchers there. And he says to the boss, so what's the correct way to operate that bandsaw? And the boss tells him. So he goes to the other worker and says, okay, mate, just tell me, how do you operate that? What's the safe way to operate that bandsaw? And so he says exactly the same thing. And he goes to the apprentice, so listen, do you use that bandsaw yet? So what's the correct way of operating that? and the apprentice gives exactly the same story as the other two, you have a system of work.
So
everybody doing exactly the same thing. So it's a system. It's a safe system of work.
Just
Documented is by far the best, but in small businesses, you're not going to have documents.
So say if there's a builder, not Moreto, so a smaller builder, right? Not using you as an example here, that has no processes at all, and you say, oh, well, that's your job. You put them through the OH&S, but they've got to supervise to make sure that they're actually doing everything right.
So you get them to sign a contract, don't you?
Yes.
And that's where you outline what your safety expectations are.
Yeah.
And they would sign that, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time talking about those safety implications?
Well, I don't work on that side of. Probably with the Monarch side, yes, I do. But on the apprenticeship factory, I don't. I'm not the field officers that work with the clients.
So I can tell you now they skirt over it.
Tracy, that I've had what's her name come in here, and she's gone right through all my processes.
That Nat.
Nat, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Nat does. And I'm pretty sure Kaz does as well, because I'll be coming out with Nat with those processes.
All brings us baked goods. I'm not sure if it's a Frank thing or not.
It probably is a Frank thing. I don't think she does it for anyone else.
Yeah, no,
Kaz who?
Kerno.
Say hello.
I will.
We used to work together.
Yeah, she used to be at TAFE for, was that 5 years ago?
She from Kai?
Yeah, she is from Kai.
Yeah, I know, Kaz.
Ah, there you go.
I went to school with her son.
There you go. It's a small world.
It is a small world.
In Shepparton, it's not 7 degrees of separation, it's 1.
Yep. So I do know that, because I have actually met a couple, not Shepparton builders, they're from outside that have no processes in place whatsoever, don't even have work cover insurance for themselves.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's what I just went, I'm pretty sure you're meant to have that. Because generally, I just went, this is not right.
Are they like a sole trader? Because if you're a sole trader, you don't have to
have it. Yeah, that's right.
If you're a sole trader and earn under $8,000 in a financial year, you don't have to have it. But if you're over that, yes, you do have it.
My wife's a sole trader. She hasn't got it.
No, you do not, because my husband is an electrician and he used to work for himself and he did not have to have work cover.
My wife was well excess of 8,000. She's a sole trader and she hasn't got it.
He had to have it if he employed somebody, but an apprentice is not classed as, like, you don't need it for an apprentice.
So if you have an apprentice on your books, that means you're employing them?
But you don't put apprentices down on your work cover because they're covered under their own
training contract.
Yeah.
Because I know that under the labour hire side, I need to have businesses that actually have a WIC code.
Because you're the employer, so you would have to have work cover for them.
Because there's two different two businesses under one company. So the Monarch personnel are a labour hire company, so we need to have all our clients have their own work cover. Where the apprenticeship factory, they don't actually necessarily have to have that, but there's one particular one. I mean, I'm pretty sure you should be having it, but anyway.
Yeah, anyway.
I'm not sure. It's a bit of a grey area.
We'll stop for 10 minutes and let you have a stretch and get up and get a drink and then we'll be back.
Yeah, you give me a headache, so I have to have Panadol.
You want 10 minutes enough, isn't it? So back at about 22.
Yeah.
Week.
Yeah, no, when it's rolling into Saturdays, it's starting at 7 in the morning, we're at 7 at night, and that's 6 days a week. That's and then he wants
not sustainable.
He wants to give you more work. That's yes, I've got to fly all over the place and got a company car and an unlimited fuel card and all that sort of wonderful stuff. But at the end of the day, the family was suffering and my mental health was suffering. So I went driving trucks for Scots, much nicer, easier. So what the stuff you were saying, Tracy, is right. All that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through the list, but you see stuff on contractors.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
how, what do you, for those, Renita, do you engage contractors? Do you have a copy of what their qualifications are for each individual contractor you bring on site?
No, somewhat I do. The ones that we regularly, like, we've got a painter that just about does the majority of our jobs, so I've got everything
Yep.
to do with him.
Yeah.
Got a plumber that we use if it's a smaller jobs that he drops everything and goes to our jobs. I've got all of his stuff.
Yeah.
But the bigger companies, no, I don't.
Yeah. No, it becomes a bit overwhelming because I mean they would keep them as well. So
I can't have documents like we've got. You know, it's a full-time job for me to enter the invoices I get, let alone trying to get everyone's qualifications. Everyone's working with children's checks for like anyone that goes to our St. Anne's job.
Yeah.
They're working with children's checks and stuff like that through for them, and it's time consuming because there's that many blokes going there, and I'm trying to keep up with it all. And I think even the guy that requested it all from me, he's getting overwhelmed with how much I'm sending through to him.
Yeah.
I don't think he realised how many people were going to be out there.
Yeah, so it's we when we subcontract, quite often we get asked for our copies of our insurances, our public liability and work cover insurances. That's pretty standard process for us. Like if I go to SBC, every year they want updates of our certificates of currency. Before they'll allow me on site. So
I've actually done that too. I've had when I was at Kidstown, I had to check to make sure that, and there was one company actually gave me a public liability insurance, and it was within date, and I just went, I've got a feeling that this doesn't feel right. Anyway, because I rang the insurance company to see if it was in play, if it was current. It goes, no, that was cancelled in June. It wasn't even current.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. I just had a gut feeling that this wasn't right. So I thought I'd just face it up, and it wasn't.
So of all of those on the list on the screen now, which ones would you see as priorities? Which ones sit inside the law?
Training, incidents.
Health monitoring.
Yep. Health monitoring. Yep.
Risk assessments.
Yep. Return to work.
Incidents, return to work.
Evacuation drills, emergency planning. Well,
I'm going to go with all of it.
In the WHS legislation, there's actually a section in the WHS Act. There's a section on emergency planning, but there's nothing sits in the OHS Act about emergency planning. Unless you're a major hazard facility, then it does. But if you're not a major hazard facility, then emergency planning doesn't sit inside the legislation. As doesn't, well, evacuation drills are only Australian standards and not a law.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, an OHS minutes, no. Permits, if it's confined spaces, stuff that's legislated, yes, you do. If it's other stuff, then it's not. Certainly your contractor records, it's in your best interest to hold as many of those as you can. But look, really, just going back to what we talked about a second ago, you just insist that the company hold them. So if you need them, you can get them.
Yeah.
And you do random orders to see they've got them, rather than trying to get copies of them. So cut your workload down by about 97%, and just ask them randomly. Just say, I noticed that Bsbwhs on site today. Can I have a copy of his records? And just keep them on their toes.
Yeah.
I'm just doing a random audit.
So when you're saying like when we do inductions for our side, any qualifications, licenses, tickets, or anything like that, they're all entered when they do an induction, and they do it themselves.
Yeah, that's okay. Like there it is. That's part of the deal when you're business, so that's fine.
Yeah.
That makes your life easier. That way you've got it electronically too. Sometimes a lot better for auditing.
Yeah, well, I think that's how we're going to try and do things is the inductions, and they load up all their induction, all their paperwork before they even get to site, and then they just do a site-specific induction on where everything is. Yeah,
that's a really good process because then you got them electronically. If you've got a great system, you can actually monitor expiry dates and all that stuff too. Because that's you can have people on site that actually some of their stuff's expired and you don't know.
Yeah, we used to use that. I think it was called Valpic. something like that.
Yeah, it flags like all our working with children checks. We got an automated email saying that it's due to be renewed.
Yep.
We also get told in a very abrupt email that if we don't have it, we don't work. Even though I've never taught a kid in my life while I've been at GoTafe.
Yeah.
I'm
pretty close to one. So I've been told.
Our system actually, like, we put driver's licenses in and the expiry dates of those driver's licenses for each of, you know, our candidates that are working, and it'll just flag up to say, yep, done. Or they need to redo their induction. So their induction is a 2-year thing. So if they're due to do the induction again and they're still working, they need to jump online and redo an induction.
Yeah.
To keep it current.
Yeah. So a lot of the systems now are great because they actually automate the process and will flag stuff. So as I said, we get an automatic email come out of our system telling us we need to renew our work with children's.
Yeah.
No heavy, no worky.
Yep.
I have to have 2. So I have to have 1 for here because my wife's a childcare worker. So my you know, when they first came out, I actually had 2 cards, 2 different numbers, 2 different cards. One to say I'm a volunteer, which is at my wife's work, and one at GoTafe. And then about 2 years into it, they realised that it happened to a lot of people, so they actually combined them. So mine's now I got 1 card with volunteer and whatever the other one is, employee, whatever it is on it.
Why do you need 2?
Well, I used to have
just
2.
use the same.
Yeah, I do, but it gets reported. It depends on who gets reported to. So on my card, if I committed an offence, it gets reported to GoTafe and the City of Greater Shepparton.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the past, I actually when they first came out, I actually had 2 cards. One for Shepparton City Council and one for GoTafe.
Oh, okay.
Then they realised it was a bit of a muck up, and so they've combined them into 1 card now. So, but it gets reported to 2 different people.
Okay.
So
yeah, because I've got 1 for employee, and I've never really gone to get 1 for a volunteer. I've just put them, you know, the netball club as the secondary.
Yeah, well, I guess it should get reported to the. It should be, if you got for 2 reasons, it should be reported to 2 different people.
Yeah, and it does, but it's not a volunteer and an
Back
employment.
when they first came out, I had 2 cards, but now I've only got 1 card now. But it gets reported 2 places. So we just talked about that legal requirements and stuff. You need to retain about airborne contaminants, confined spaces, high risk work, electrical equipment. So there's a whole stack of stuff there. You need to keep it. It's all out of the regs. Well, that's my last slide, everybody.
Ooh, got the map there, decent stop sign.
So what I'm going to do, I'm probably going to call a brief training session on Wednesday night because I want to go through the assessment again to make sure that everyone's really clear, because it is a bit of a difficult one, just to make sure that everyone's really clear about what the expectations are from the assessment. And we'll work through it for a while, and then I'll let you go on your own way.
Sounds good.
I thought we were going to get through them tonight. I had a gut feeling. I didn't know where the end was, but I had a gut feeling we were going to get through them tonight. Because they cut the shit out of the unit. So any questions?
No.
And you've sent the electronic version of a fresh one.
Yes, I did.
Last week. Yeah.
I picked up all the typos.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Righto.
All right. We'll see you Wednesday.
See you Wednesday.
See ya.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.